Hi there, Dan here again. Hey, I got a couple of questions for you. Have you ever been told that you use too much passive voice in your writing and not enough active voice? Yes? Well, that doesn't surprise me. Okay, next question. Do you know why you should use active voice rather than passive voice? No? Well, that doesn't surprise me either. Now here's the big question. You ready? Do you know the difference between active and passive voice? Hey, well, if you do, great. But if you don't, you ain't alone. Not by a long shot. I think every proposal writer I have ever met has been scolded at one time or another for using too much passive voice and not enough active voice. Yet most of you don't know the difference between the two, or even why you should use active voice more than passive voice. Well, this tutorial will change all that. It's called Use Active Voice, or Tell them what you'll do, not what will be done. Here's a clue. The difference between passive and active voice is in that subtitle. Hey, aren't I clever? By the way, you'll need a pen and a sheet of paper for this tutorial. I've got a couple of short exercises built into the video. Okay, as usual, we'll start off with what you will learn from this video. So first, I will give you one rule of English grammar. Now, don't be alarmed. It'll all be over before you know it. Next, I'll tell you the difference between active and passive voice, and I'll show you how to spot active versus passive voice. Then we'll look at what's wrong with passive voice. I'll show you how to write in the active voice, and, this may surprise you, I'll tell you when to use the passive voice. Because I'm here to say that passive voice ain't all bad. It exists for a reason in the English language. It's just a matter of learning when to use it appropriately. Okay then, lots to do. Onward. First up, what is passive voice? Uh-oh. Duck and cover. Stop, drop, and roll. Grammar lesson ahead. Well, I did warn you about this. Okay, to spot passive verbs, look for any form of the verb to be plus the past participle of a main verb. Usually that's a verb ending in ed or ing. In the passive voice, the receiver of the action comes before the verb and the doer of the action comes after. Okay, there you go. That's your grammar lesson for today. Now here's some examples of passive voice. The panel was inspected yesterday. The material is being ordered right now. The winner will be selected tomorrow. By the way, I have to say this here and now. Passive voice has nothing to do with tense. Passive voice is not past tense, nor is it the same as past tense. The first example is passive voice past tense. It was inspected in the past. The second one is present tense. The material is being ordered even as we speak. The third is future tense. The winner will be selected tomorrow. All are passive, but each is a different tense. Well, confused yet? Don't be. We're done with the grammar and the technical explanation of passive voice. Now I'll tell you the most practical way to spot passive voice in your writing. With active voice, the emphasis is always on the doer of the action, and the doer always appears before the verb. Here's an example. We will document the functional relationships in the program plan. Note that the doer of the action, we, is the subject of the sentence and appears before the verb. There's no confusion about who will be doing what, assuming you know who we is. Now, with the passive voice, the emphasis is on what's being done, and the doer is either not in the sentence or is at the back of the sentence following the word by. As in this sentence, the functional relationships will be documented in the program plan. In this example, the emphasis of the sentence is on the functional relationships. There is no emphasis on the person or persons who will actually be documenting these relationships. Now you see the differences in these examples once I've explained it. But for the writer, both sentences probably mean the same thing. He knows that both sentences mean that his team will document the functional relationships in the program plan. But the readers, who only have the words on the page, only know one thing for sure, that the functional relationships will be documented in the program plan. The readers, the evaluators of your proposal, can't be sure exactly who will be doing the documenting. This kind of ambiguity forces the reader to stop and reread to make sure she's getting it right. It slows her down, it tires her out. Okay, here's some more examples. First, the passive voice. A kickoff meeting will be conducted after contract award. A database will be designed. The work in this task will be conducted by AGI in-house staff. And now the rewrites into active voice. We will conduct a kickoff meeting 1 week after contract award. We will design the records database. AGI in-house staff will conduct the work in this task. Note that only in the third example of the passive voice is it clear who will do the work, while in all three of the active voice examples, it's absolutely clear who the doer is. No ambiguity here. Okay, let me pause a minute here, talk a little bit about passive voice, how you learn to use it, and why it's become such a big part of your writing today. If you're a college-educated scientist or engineer, you learned about passive voice all the way through college. You were told that you should never focus the writing on you, but on your subject. Above all, you were taught that you need to show objectivity in your writing. And passive voice is great for doing that. Your professors told you this about passive voice. Your textbook showed you this. And once you graduated, you came out in the real world, got yourself a job. Passive voice has become probably the main mode of writing that you use. But I'm here to tell you that there are times, especially in proposals, when it's essential that you reject that notion of objectivity and you focus the attention on you, your firm, your team, whoever it is that's going to be doing the work that you're proposing on. That's exactly what the customer wants to see. What you will do for him after you've been awarded the contract. If evaluators walk away from your proposal thinking that you aren't invested in doing the work, they will not give you the benefit of the doubt, and your score will suffer, believe you me. So remember this, passive voice takes the attention away from you. Active voice puts the attention back on you and what you'll do. Use active voice. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about what's wrong with passive voice. Well, in the first place, as we have seen, passive voice focuses attention away from the doer, you. Take a look at this example. The specifications will be written requiring that all contractors submit a detailed construction schedule that includes a number of specified milestones and durations to which the construction contractors must conform. In this example from a proposal, there's no way to tell immediately who will do what here. Now look at this revision. We will prepare specifications that require all contractors to submit a detailed construction schedule that includes a number of specified milestones and durations to which the construction contractors must conform. Who will prepare the specs? We will. No mistaking that. Okay, the next thing wrong with passive voice is using passive voice adds unnecessary words. Take a look at this example from a proposal. The overhead power line east of the site is not anticipated to be directly impacted during construction, and it is expected to be in service to provide power. Now in the active voice, the overhead power line east of the site will remain operational during construction to provide power. You need 12 more words in the first sentence to say what you really mean in the second sentence. Plus, the structure of the first sentence is so much more complex and takes more brain power to disentangle and translate. Next, passive voice can be confusing and ambiguous. Now take a look at this example. Pause the video and read it to yourself. Did you have trouble getting through it? I did. This is very confusing to read. Now some of it has to do with the fact that we don't know what they're talking about, maybe with 1.0 mg cells, but beyond that, much of why it's hard to read is due to using the passive, not the active voice. Plowing through sentence after sentence of this kind of writing also tires the reader out. You want the evaluator to be as alert as he can be while reading your proposal. You don't want him to be thinking, God, I can't wait till this is over. Of course, he'll probably be thinking that anyway, but don't give him any more reason to. Finally, passive voice lacks accountability. Now this is great if you're a politician. However, it doesn't work so well for you if you're seen as trying to wriggle out of admitting a mistake. Due to the difficulties in locating right-of-way data, the project will likely have to be extended by at least 60 days. In this case, the project manager was trying to avoid admitting to the customer that he couldn't meet a milestone. Okay, there you have it. The reasons not to use the passive voice. And now for Pop Quiz. I told you you would need a pen and some paper, so pause the video and get those now. All right, what I'm going to do is show you a sentence in the passive voice, And then I want you to pause the video and rewrite it in the active voice. And we'll go through a couple of 3 examples of this. Here's the first sentence. The initial efforts of our construction management team will be directed at developing the project schedule. So rewrite this sentence. How would you rewrite it in the active? I see a few ways to rewrite this. One is, as our first task, we will develop the project schedule. The second is, we will develop the project schedule as our first task. Both are in the active voice. We know who the doer is in each. But there's a subtle difference between these two. The first sentence draws the reader's attention to the first task. The second sentence focuses attention on the project schedule. Now these are subtle differences, but the reader will notice. So keep your pen and paper ready, because here's another. Precast roof panels will offer potential cost savings for shallow or no earthen cover and will be considered as part of the design. So pause and rewrite this into the active. Again, I see a few options. The first is, we will consider precast roof panels as part of the design, as they offer potential cost savings for shallow or no earthen cover. I also came up with the second potential rewrite. Because precast roof panels offer potential cost savings for shallow or no earthen cover, we will consider them as part of the design. Again, both active voice, but because the way the sentences are worded and the way they're organized, they have different emphases. And we'll do one more. The inlet to each compartment will be provided with a nozzle, standard reducer fitting, sized to promote turbulent flow into the tank. Take a moment to rewrite this sentence into the active voice. So I came up with, we will install a nozzle, standard reducer fitting, to the inlet of each compartment sized to promote turbulent flow into the tank. Here's a second example. To promote turbulent flow into the tank, we will install a nozzle, standard reducer fitting, to the inlet of each compartment. There's a big difference between the original passive voice and either of the rewrites. In the original, the nozzle will only be provided. The evaluator cannot know that the writer intends to provide and install the nozzle. The active voice rewrites, however, make it clear that the writer intends to install the nozzle. Okay, you're probably getting tired of all this, but hang on. There's only a couple more things to say. Here's some more passive voice. First, I want you to see the cumulative effect of passive voice in a paragraph and the difficulties it causes for the reader. Pause the video and read this. How hard was it to read? Did you finish it? Now take a look at this. Compare that with the original. Easier to read? I think so. All right, one last thing, and then we'll call it quits. When to use passive voice? I said at the beginning there's a time and place for passive voice in proposals. So here you go. You use passive voice when describing a process and when you want to emphasize results. Take a look at this example. Model-based instructions, MBI, are critical to our approach. During physical processing of flight hardware, Delmia and computer-aided design solid models will be used as the basis for MBIs to accelerate learning curves, reduce cost, and improve quality. MBIs allow technicians to obtain dimensional data, manipulate views, identify material properties, identify interfaces, and clarify ambiguities without the intervention of engineers. Typically, at least 75% of a technician's time is spent researching and not building the product. MBIs eliminate that research. All related data are linked through MBIs for a single point of data, and MBIs will be available to technicians via our centralized database. The passive voice in this paragraph focuses the reader's attention on the process. In the first instance, there's no reason to use the active voice and say, we will use the tools as the basis for MBIs. We want to focus our attention on how the use of the tools will accelerate learning curves, reduce costs, and improve quality. These are direct benefits to the customer. It's what he asked for. Putting us in the frame draws attention away from the benefits. In a similar way here, passive voice is okay because rewriting the sentence to make the technician the doer of that action, spending time, would draw away from another benefit, that MBIs eliminate time-wasting research. Finally, the passive construction here and here describe processes. Converting these to active voice would be awkward and clunky. Okie doke, that's the definitive explanation about active versus passive voice. Now let's wrap this up. In summary, active voice adds more life to your writing. Use active voice when describing what you will do. You can opt for passive voice when you describe standard processes. You can always send questions and comments via the form on the page, and don't forget to check out the rest of the videos. And until next time, happy proposaling.